Hello, welcome to The Wandering Drew. I am Drew. In this episode, I'd like to discuss my equipment that I used on my recent hike on the Ocala National Forest portion of the Florida Trail. During that trip, which lasted for me approximately 4.5 to 5 days of hiking, I completed somewhere in the neighborhood of, depending on whether you want to go with strict mileage on the map or what my GPS read, and obviously there's a little backtracking and some side trails that I did, somewhere in the neighborhood of about 72 miles on that portion of the Florida Trail. And I'd like to just discuss a little bit of my equipment, how it performed for me, some things that I'm going to change probably for some upcoming hikes. Each time I go on a hike and you come back, you should be looking over your gear and realizing what you needed and what you didn't need. Did everything you take with you serve you well? Or is there something that you need to change out and perhaps swap it out for something better? And there are some pieces of equipment that you just didn't use at all and you realize I really don't need, and I carried them and there was no need to carry them. So that's pretty much what I'm going to do. It's going to be a little bit of a gear review as well as some changes that I'm going to make. On this hike, I managed to reduce several times. I went back over my gear. I know I did a gear video, and I'll put a link to that video with this video. But I went back and I tweaked some of the items in there. There were also a couple of items that I originally put in the gear video that I did before I went on the hike that I said I may not take or I may swap them out. And I'll discuss some of those things as well. A lot of the extra stuff I didn't end up taking. The weather was predicted to be pretty warm most of the time, and then only on 1 or 2 nights did it get actually cold. So I really didn't need a lot of cold weather gear. So I ended up not bringing my heavier winter gear and jacket with me. So upon arrival at Rodman's campground, when I parked my vehicle, I weighed my backpack, which at that point included all my gear that I was actually taking with me that was in the backpack. So that included all my food, all my water, including the bear canister, and I weighed 26.2 pounds. Upon my return to my vehicle at Rodman's campground, I once again weighed my pack. I simulated the same circumstances in the fact that I had all my remaining food still on me, the bear canister, and my water bottles were full, just like they were when I parked my vehicle. And the weight of my backpack when I finished the hike was 22.1 pounds. So during the hike, I had consumed or lost 4.1 pounds, the majority of that being food. One exception was that I did use my gas canister and fully deplete it on my last night of my hike. So I did dispose of it in a trash receptacle so that I would not have to carry it. So other than that, all that weight was food that I consumed. And I think I did pretty well on the food category. I didn't come home with too much. I had a handful of snacks. I had actually packed an extra RX bar in case I was out longer than needed or I was hungrier than needed. And I still had enough snacks for my 5th day if it took me the whole day to hike. I just didn't bring a dinner. So I had about 3 or 4 snacks left. So I think I did fairly well with guesstimating how much food I would need. So that's pretty much The food category, which covered, I started out somewhere in the neighborhood of 4.8 pounds of food. And that changed and fluctuated a little bit. I did several revisions and took some food out, but I also added some at the end. The BV500 or the Bear Vault 500 that I used worked very, very well. It, while being over 2 pounds of weight, and I would have preferred to have not hiked with it, comes in handy. I used it for all my smellable items that I was worried about. I had no encounters with animals. I did use it every day I camped, even in the campgrounds. They had bear vaults in some of the places, so I didn't have to worry about it. But I stayed at campgrounds for 2 days with no bear vault, and I placed this away from my campsite on the ground, and it was not bothered either day by any animals. And I know they were there. I know my last day, my fourth day of camping, there were a lot of raccoons running around the area, and none of them bothered with my food. So I also used it additionally to carry items at times, almost like an extra pocket or pouch on the hike. So like at one point I filled up with my water bladder with almost 3 liters of extra water because I knew it was coming to a dry spell. And I carried that water for about 6 miles inside the bear vault with whatever food was there, and it filled it up. So it came in handy that I would also stick other items in there too. In addition to, so if I had something that I just wanted to store rather than put in the backpack, sometimes I put in the bear vault. So it would stay full of volume as I used up that food, so the items in there wouldn't rattle around too much. So I was able to put, like, let's say a bandana in there, or even extra clothes just to keep it full, so those items wouldn't be moving around and shifting their weight as I walked. My backpack, the Arc Blast, did perform well. I like that backpack. It's super light. I did have an issue with my left shoulder strap. Again, it was rubbing. I didn't get a blister this time. Last time I went hiking, I actually got a blister after several days. It's just the straps aren't extremely padded compared to other brands, and I was slightly exceeding the recommended weight for this pack when I first started out. It's recommended that you have a maximum of 25 pounds, and I was obviously slightly over that at 26.2. So that could be a factor as well. I just think it's just the way it lays on my my chest. It just seems to rub a little bit as I walk. I am contemplating taking my original pack, which is my Osprey. I have a Volt 60 liter pack for my Pinhoti trail coming up, because I will have a few more items and I will have to carry a lot more food because my resupply points will be further along. I'm looking at 7 to 8 days of food in addition to carrying some cold weather gear that I think I'm going to need to have just to be prepared for any weather I might have. So I think that I might want to take that larger backpack. I'm still not entirely sure what I'm going to do. I'm going to probably get all my gear together, see how it fits in the pack and how it handles, and then make a decision on that. Either pack I think will serve me well, and I like them both. The one thing that I like about the Osprey pack over the Z-Pack is that I like the separation and the pockets that are available on the Osprey, where obviously the Z-Pack manages to reduce the weight so well, because it does away with a lot of those extra pockets and pouches and zippers and partitions that the Osprey pack has in it. Additionally, one thing that the Z-Pack has going for it that the Osprey can't compete with is its water resistance. In order for me to take my Osprey pack out, I have to use a rain cover on it, whereas I don't worry about that with the Z-Pack because it's pretty much water resistant. The likelihood of it wading through is slim to none. My Z-Pack duplex tent performed great. I'm very happy and satisfied with it. Only really the first night or two did I have condensation, and that was because the humidity was so high and it was raining and I couldn't keep the flaps open. Pretty much every other night after that, I had no issue with condensation, and I like having the tent. The weight is great on it. It's easy to set up, easy to take down, and has more than enough room for me, including my gear, which I like. It always looks like the pack exploded or vomited all over the floor. Everything's still strewn about, but it gives me plenty of room for me to move around in there. I'm not touching the sides of the tent. You know, I'm not that tall. I'm only 5'8", so I have ample room in there. I can sit up. I can get dressed in there comfortably, but I can also have all my gear next to me out of the weather and in there. So even if it's inclement weather, like the first day, it started raining after I got in there, and when I got up in the morning, it was still raining. I'm able to pack everything up. Pretty much everything except for the tent is already packed and ready to go, and all I needed to do was get out quickly, collapse that tent, roll it up, and stick it in the pack. And I don't worry about that. If I really need to, I can stick it in the outside pocket, which is mesh, and I don't have to worry about it wetting the contents of the pack on the inside, because it's totally isolated with the pack being so waterproof. So that tent still, to me, performs great, and I really enjoy carrying it. It's just amazing how light that thing is. When I've had other tents. I have 3 other tents, 4 if you want to count a family tent, which weighs about 60 pounds. That's not a backpacking tent, but I actually own 4 other tents, and this one is by far the lightest, well over a pound lighter than my other backpacking tent that I have. So I really do like it, and there is room that if I really need to in a pinch, I know that I can put a second person in there. One of the items that I took on this trip, and it's the first time that I've ever used it, was my sleeping mat, which is the Xped HL winter medium wide sleeping pad. And that pad, it's a little awkward to blow up at first with using the schnozzle. I like saying that. How often can you use a word like schnozzle in a conversation? But that, while it was a little awkward, it's a simple system. It does the job. And it is thicker than my Neo Air by about an inch, which helps me out. I'm a side sleeper a lot of times when I'm camping because I feel so hot all the time. As I mentioned in the videos, I always seem to do this rotisserie thing where, if I lay flat, my back gets hot. So then I have to roll over on one side, and then whatever side is against the bottom of the mattress pad gets hot, and I keep ending up flipping up and back all night long. I feel like I'm rotating like a rotisserie chicken cooking. So this mat is no different. Being that the temperatures were really warm the first day, I was sweating. Even the last day, the temperatures were still warm. The Xped air mattress has a R rating, I believe, of like 5.2. It's made for the winter. The temperatures on those nights were not cold enough. They were somewhere in the first night, I think it was in the 70s. And my last night, it was a little bit cooler, maybe in the 60s. It was just too hot between my bag, which I used as a blanket basically, or like a quilt. I left it open. It was just way too hot. So that was uncomfortable. In the future, I would probably not take that for a warm weather hike, but I did want to try it out. And I gotta say, I'm pleasantly surprised. I never felt myself bottom out. I never felt my hip. I had no pain in the morning on my hips because I didn't feel like sometimes with the Neo Air, it either deflates a little bit at night, especially if the temperature gets cooler, or in the middle of the night, I'll feel my hip is actually touching the ground. And of course, it's not giving way, and you get pain in your hips that way. And a lot of times I notice my legs are hurting in the morning, and it's because I was actually on the ground, or I slid off the pad with my sleeping bag. And with the Xped, because of the way it's curved a little bit, and it's got a little texture, I didn't feel that. A couple of times I did slide off if I wasn't on total level ground, but for the most part, I felt that I stayed on the pad a little better, and it is wider, so I can actually lay down on it with my hands at my side, and I'm not falling off of it. So I think it went well, and I'm looking forward to using it on the Pinhoti Trail in colder weather. The same goes for the sleeping bag. I can have no complaints about it. It just feels, in hot weather, it feels very plasticky, and one of the things I didn't bring, which I mentioned, but I never did go get out of my gearbox, is a sleeping bag liner. And that would alleviate a lot of that moisture feeling of the sweat and the feeling like you're in a plastic garbage bag when it's really hot. But that bag is really not made for hot weather. It's made for colder weather. So I can't blame the bag for that. The clothes that I took with me, I'm pretty happy with. I did not take, obviously, the winter jacket, the Montbell jacket, which I just bought, which I haven't used yet. It's just way too warm. The temperatures weren't predicted to be that cold. My fleece provided me all the warmth I needed, even on that cold night when it got to 48 degrees. I did sleep with it. My sleeping pad and my sleeping bag were more than warm enough for me that I didn't need anything. A matter of fact, on the warm days, I actually did not wear my nighttime gear that I usually switch into. I just didn't bother because it was just too hot with it on in the sleeping bag. And I would have to frequently open the sleeping bag or vent it in order to keep cool. That's one of the problems with a bag that's made for cold weather. In warmer weather, it's just way too hot. Other than that, all my clothes perform well. There were a couple of times I was walking, it was kind of warm. I really wish I was wearing shorts, but I really appreciate the long sleeves and the long pants for protection from getting cut up from brush. And most of the mornings when I was walking, it was so damp that my pants were getting all wet because I was picking up all the water from the plants and stuff as I walked by. Additionally, you saw in one of the videos I talk about, I was wearing that bright orange shirt, which when I ran into some hunters, they all appreciate the fact that I was wearing bright orange to make myself very visible. And they made a point of mentioning the fact that I'm the only person that they saw hiking, and they said they had saw a few people out walking other than me, but that I was the only one that was wearing orange, and they appreciate that as hunters, that it made me very visible. So there you go, for feedback of what the hunters think about when you wear orange and when you don't. The only thing I didn't end up bringing was an extra pair of socks. I did bring 2 pairs of socks, one for daytime, one for nighttime, and then ended up using my nighttime socks one day just because I really like having dry socks if I can. My socks were damp for like 2 days, and I ended up wearing them one night to sleep, and they dried out overnight, and after that I had no issues. I did get that one blister on the second day, which I haven't had a blister in about 3 years. So I'm going to attribute that to the socks. That day I had to walk in the water about 6-7 times, so my feet were pretty much wet most of the day while hiking. The water wasn't very deep. It was probably about ankle deep, but it was enough to get the shoes and the socks wet, and they never dried out. So that next day I did wear my nighttime socks to hike in, and then switched back the next day to my regular hiking socks for the next 2 days. And I had no further issue. The blister did not get any worse. I had drained it. By the time I left the trail, it was already well on its way to healing. I was really glad I took my towel with me, because on the first 2 nights, especially that first night, which was really, really hot, I was able to use the campgrounds, and they had a shower. And I was really pleasantly surprised about the campgrounds. My Katadyn B-Free filter, I love that thing more and more. You see in one of the videos, I think at the second day, I show you the flow rate on that thing, or the third day, I think it is. I show you the flow rate on that thing. That's just it's a gravity filter. It's got a very large surface area. To me, there's no comparison between that and the Sawyer Squeeze. It's a much better product in my opinion. I do not like the Sawyer Squeeze personally. I don't want to have to work hard to pump my water through. I've always had gravity filters, really. I have carried a Sawyer Squeeze on 1 or 2 occasions, but I had actually a Sawyer gravity filter before I went to the Katadyn, and unfortunately did discontinue that product, and I could not get a new filter for it. But those products to me are just easier to camp with and hike. I love the fact that I could hang it up, either place it on a pole or a tree limb, or even on a bench, and just let it drain. And if I'm doing something else, I don't have to stand there. I can let it filter what I want, but usually it happens so quick. I mean, I can fill a 1 liter bottle up really in like a minute or so. That's really, really good. And also you saw how effective it was with that water that was brown. And when I filtered it, it was nearly clear. So it didn't improve the taste. The taste was not improved, but at least I know I wasn't getting all that silt or particulate into me. And the next morning when I woke up, I didn't take a picture of it, I should have. There was a large layer at the bottom of that filter bag of brown material that had settled overnight in that water that I was filtering. So I was really happy that the filter pretty much removes all those materials so that I'm not drinking them. My MSR Pocket Rocket 2 stove performed well, except the fact that I needed more gas probably. I did run out of gas making my last meal. Pretty much I was done with it, but it pretty much ran out of fuel on that day. And that's because I didn't probably have a full canister to start with. And I had only made pretty much 5 boilings of water out of that thing. So in the future, I would make sure I had a full can of gas, full canister, or take a larger canister, which doesn't nest inside, but would give me more options in terms of cooking food or warming stuff up. And I'll be taking a larger canister on the Pinhoti because I'm going to need it for longer days. I figure I need at least 8 days of the ability to heat food, even though I think it'll only be 7 or 6, but I want to have 8 just in case. Additionally, I like having the option of, if I want to, making either a hot chocolate or some soup in addition to my meal that I'm having for dinner, if it's really cold and I'm still feeling like I want to warm up at night before I go to bed. I generally will not be making coffee, as I don't usually, and breakfast and lunch I generally have cold food, so it's just really for dinner. My headlamp, I still have an older version of the Black Diamond Storm, which I like its features, I like its weight. Between the weight and the ratio, I'm glad with it. The only thing that's wrong with that light is the headband is starting to show its age. It doesn't exactly lay flat anymore. It's got some wave to it with the elastic, but it has the features I like. It has the bright output when I need it, the dimness. If I'm not doing something that I need bright light, I can save the battery a lot by dimming it. It's got dimmable red light and white light, and it lasts a long time. Generally, I don't have to change the batteries at all. I will either put new batteries in before the Pinhoti trip. I may possibly carry them, but I probably won't carry spare batteries. I usually don't because I don't want to carry the weight. If I know the batteries are good, I know it can last several days. I don't use it that often or at night that I'm worried about it. Additionally, it does have a lock feature, so it will not go on by accident in your pack when it's not supposed to. So sometimes I'll take a battery out anyway while I'm traveling, but if I don't want to, you can lock it out so that it will not accidentally go on. So those are all good features. So I have no plan on replacing it. I know there's lighter ones out there now and there's rechargeable ones, but if it's not broke, don't fix it. It's working for me. I already have it and own it. I'm not going to change it out. The Garmin InReach performed once again as expected. I was able to text if I needed to, if I didn't have service. I did have service most days. At some point, I was able to check messages, or most nights, I think I could phone home. Sometimes I could just text, but not phone home. I have AT&T as a carrier. I know several people have told me that's not the best carrier for that area, especially hiking. I was warned by Carl, the shuttle driver, who told me AT&T is not the best to have in there. There'll be several portions without coverage, and there were portions that I didn't have coverage. But at most campgrounds, I was able to get some type of service, at least a text. And if I walked around, sometimes I could find enough signal to make a phone call. The InReach did well. The battery held all 5 days of the hike without recharging. I think I came back, when I got to my car, I think I had about 20% still on the battery. So the first night, I think I accidentally left it on. It used a little bit more than expected, but other than that, it's about 10 to 15% battery power per day, depending on my hiking. Now, most days I really wasn't hiking as long as I normally would on a longer trip. There were some days I was only hiking, 6 hours or 7 hours. Some days were a little longer, but normally I would send out a message and then shut that off at night to conserve battery power, or at least stop the tracking so it's not reporting. So that saves a lot of battery power as well. Additionally, I didn't check it as much as I usually do because I have my watch now that has GPS on it. So I'm looking at the watch to check my mileage instead of the GPS. So not turning on that screen as much as I have done in the past really saves that battery power. The screen is the biggest drawer of battery power. So if you can resist turning it on and looking at it all the time, you'll really make that power go farther because you're not using it as often. My Kodak tripod I used several times. It did seem like it broke at one point, or at least loosened up. I was able to get it to continue working, and I like having it. I don't know if it's worth the wait all the time. I regret taking it a lot, but it did come in handy, and I used it several times to record myself whether it was at my campsite or while walking along the trail. I didn't do too much, like bead type footage of me walking. I really don't like walking back if I have to, and sometimes I'm just not motivated. But I really like having that option. I'll probably carry it as well, just because I like to have the ability to set it up on a tripod. The other bracket that I used with the stick pick, I thought performed very, very well. I actually used it one time standalone to record myself at a campground, and I thought I did well. Unfortunately, the stick pick, as it wears, and with your trekking poles getting worn, it doesn't always hold on as firm. You got to really put it on there, the end of the trekking pole, really firmly. And I worry about it a couple of times. I start talking, and with the weight of the cell phone, because they are making the cell phones, my cell phone is so big and heavy compared to older models that it actually ends up falling down and dropping. So you're looking at it, and the next thing you know, it's upside down and it's not working. So I worry about the reliability if I was like on a ledge or on a mountaintop, if it came loose and dropped, not just breaking, but possibly going over the ledge or falling down a mountain and me not be able to get it or use it. And now I have no camera at all to take any pictures or record anything. Additionally, since I use it as a navigational source as well, I worry about losing that. So I'll probably keep with what I have because I don't have anything better, but I'll keep looking and hopefully come up with something different. My first aid kit and all the items I took with us did well on the trail. However, after this trail, I did meet my family, and because we were right near Orlando, we did go to Disney. And I proved to end up using my first aid kit more for my family at Disney than I use on the trail. Several of them, while walking around Disney, got blisters and ended up going through all my Band-Aids and all my KT tape within the first 3 days that we were there. So I have to replenish all those items, and it made me rethink that if I was on a multiple day hike and actually got some blisters, I would have to resupply myself because I don't carry enough. I've really pared down. This time I went very, very light on the Band-Aids and everything, and even the KT tape. I had enough for all my days, but that was it. I didn't carry a lot of extra. So one of the things I did this time that I haven't done in the past is I actually pre-cut KT tape into strips, and I think I'm going to do that again. It works out a lot easier that they're already cut to fit my feet. I know generally how wide I want them, and I just pre-cut them so that it's one less thing I have to do and risk, damaging or cutting myself, or just one less thing to have to do. So I'm going to do that again before I leave. I'm going to probably pre-cut several strips of KT tape, enough that I haven't a total change of KT tape for each day. And I did use KT tape for multiple days that I didn't need to use all of it. So if I may end up coming home with some, but at least this way I know I'll have enough. My Ultra shoes performed well again. They're the same ones I've used on the Ocean to Lakes Trail. However, they are, I think, too small for me now. They're actually an 11.5. I used to wear a 10.5 shoe, and these are an 11.5. And I'm still getting some banging of the toe box every once in a while. And I have 2 toes that were bruised. Luckily, the nails didn't separate, and I don't think they're going to be falling off or separating in the future. But the toes were bruised, and it took about a week or so for them to get better. So I am going to probably upgrade to a larger size. I've bought 2 different models of the Ultra, and those are the Timps 1.5. I bought the Lone Peaks and another model in, even the Timp, I think they're 2s now, in 11.5, and both of them were tighter. The shoes actually look smaller, and the toe box, which Ultra advertises as being the largest, and that's their claim to fame, actually seems smaller. And I measured them with my current shoes, and they are actually narrower. So I'm going to try maybe going up to a 12, but if that doesn't really fit me very well, then I think I'm done with Ultras, and I'll either go back to my Solomons, or I'm going to be looking for another shoe brand to hike with. My battery backup that I took with me did well. I have that 26,800 milliamp Anchor battery, and I think I ended up with probably close or just under 20% of battery still left. That's just by going to the lights. You have no idea where it's at. There's only 4 lights on it. So it had 1 light left, so it's actually 25% or less. But it powered up all my devices. It charged my watch every day, I did not use it to charge up the GPS because I was seeing how far I could go, but it charged up my phone every night and my watch. And additionally, a lot of times I would charge my phone more than once because I was using it for video, and I was also using it to edit the videos from the trail, which is not as easy as it seems. It's hard to work on that little screen, and I'd much rather do it at home on my laptop. But all the 5 videos from each day were edited and uploaded from my phone when I had service. I'm looking at possibly upgrading my service when I do the Pinhoti so I can post videos from the trail if I'm able to get signal. Right now I don't have unlimited data, and to do that it would be very expensive. It took over 3 hours for my first video to upload, and that was at a place where I had Wi-Fi in close proximity, like in a house. So that's just way too long for me to do from the trail, I think, using data and battery power if it's at a shortage. So I may have to wait until I get to a hotel or a town and have better signal and more power. A couple of things I realized I needed. I didn't have soap with me, or enough soap. When I took the showers, I didn't have enough soap to really take a good shower. So I'll be looking at bringing more soap with me in the future, liquid soap, as well as to wash out some of my clothes items. I used up most of my soap in the first day or so, taking a shower, and the second day that I had none left for the rest of the trip. I had sanitizer but no soap. So that's one of the things I'll change. Additionally, the morning it was a little cold and wet. I realized it would be really nice to have some gloves. I didn't bring any gloves, so I'll probably purchase a small pair of I'll probably purchase a pair of gloves, like knit gloves, just something to warm you a little bit when it's cold out, but not keep the heat in and keep you hot. So nothing waterproof or anything like that. One of the things I may look at getting also is to get some down booties to sleep with to keep my feet warm. Even with my sleeping bag, and when it dropped down that one day into the 50s or so, the 40s, my feet were a little chilly. The rest of me was very warm, but my feet were cold. And even though the foot box of my sleeping bag has no zipper and it's not open, I still feel like it's chilly, or I can feel drafts blowing through there. Maybe in the stitching, or maybe it's just psychological. But I think having an additional layer of warmth down there would serve me well in really cold weather. So other than those items, and adding, obviously in the Pinhoti, I'll be taking my winter jacket, my puffy jacket. I'll also be adding probably a liner to my sleeping bag for comfort and additional warmth if needed. I don't think there's too much I'm gonna probably change. The pack, I'm up in the air about. Just gonna see how much gear I can pack in and how it rides on me, and that'll make me decide whether to go to the larger Osprey pack or stick with the Z pack. That's it. That's my results of my trip, how my gear performed, and overall I'm pretty satisfied with it. I think I did well also. However, I am thinking that if I was in Georgia or even on the Pinhoti, due to the elevation change and the altitude changes, I would have had trouble. So I'm going to start working out a little bit more vigorously and try to get in shape. I have about 6-7 weeks till I'm planning on leaving. I'm doing the Pinhoti in mid-January, and this gives me enough time to probably do a little bit of cardio and improve my performance in that area. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, appreciate you taking time out of your day to watch my videos. If you like what I'm doing, please hit the like button below, leave a comment. I always appreciate getting comments. If you have any questions or thoughts on what I'm doing or something you'd like me to do or discuss, I would appreciate hearing from you. And consider subscribing if you like what I'm doing and you enjoy these videos. As always, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. Till we meet again.